It is 2019 at the time of making this video, and I want you to go back. I want you to go back to 2009. That's 10 years ago. No, was it? It's 10, yeah, 2009, and then 1999. It's hard to believe that 1999 was only 20 years ago. And I want you to look at the world in 1999. Now, I was born in 1991, so I was born in Qatar, Middle East. So 1999, I was 8 years old. So I will tell you what I remember of the world when I was 8 years old. First of all, as far as the phone scene goes, I remember one of my uncles at the time had this big giant phone in his not even in his pocket, because it can't fit in his pocket. It was sort of you put it right here. And my dad, who's a medical doctor, he had the what do they call them? Beepers or bleepers or something. Basically, anytime somebody wanted him at work, they would ring him, and then he would have to make a call to them via a landline. So not only did we not have smartphones, but barely anybody had a cell phone to begin with. They were there. I am aware that in perhaps in America and other places in the world, they had already to the public more developed technology. But I mean, still, cell phones were a new concept. When I was 8 years old, nobody had a cell phone around me except for that one uncle. Okay? So that's only 20 years ago, folks. 20 years ago. That is it. Do you realize how small of a time span that is? We jumped, everybody had cell phones, and then before you know it, all these social media outlets popped up. YouTube popped up in 2006. Didn't even really begin to take to be popular until after 2010. Facebook around the same time. Twitter, all these social media platforms, which we, from our perspective, they seem like they've been around forever. 20 years. 20 years. A world transformed completely from a world. And I live in a village in Thailand. Everybody's got a smartphone here, even the old folks. Okay? I see them with their smartphones. So, it's like the world went from nobody had a phone. We used landlines. I mean, we had dial-up internet at that time. I remember every time somebody was talking, if somebody was using the internet and somebody picked up the phone, whoever was using the internet would get mad because their internet connection would get cut off. And it was so slow, it was like turtle pace. So all I really did at those I didn't even start using the internet until I was maybe 11. So I didn't even use it in 1999. What am I saying? We didn't have a computer. We didn't even have a computer when I was 8 years old. I think we got it a couple of years after. Not even a computer at the house. Okay, it was around the time computers were becoming a thing. And I think around that time, maybe my dad got us a computer for the whole family. Okay? So at the time, I didn't use internet. I didn't use it maybe until I was 10. So I definitely used it after the year 2000. Computers, same thing. Didn't use them until after the year 2000. Now look. Holy shit. Holy shit. 20 years later. It feels as if we have been connecting through technology, through phones, through computers forever. Doesn't it feel like that? Can you believe that this platform that we're speaking through has only been around for 13 years? That is it. 13 years. And people always say, well, what am I going to make YouTube videos on? I mean, the market is oversaturated. No! No! This is a young company. This has only been around for 13 years. That is it. Anybody who starts a YouTube channel now is early in the game. You're early in the game. We're going to continue to have 10 billion people. So we're only at 7.5 now. Another 2.5 billion will be born will be alive in the next, I think, what, by 2050 or something? It'll be 10 billion. More people are having access to internet. You have the bigger countries like India is beginning to have access to YouTube now. More and more people are looking things up on YouTube in English too. Before you know it, the Chinese government will loosen its grip on YouTube. Eventually it will happen, eventually. And then you have the Chinese market, and I teach English to Chinese kids, and let me tell you, these new kids, they all speak English and they listen to English music, and pretty soon you have that whole market looking things up on YouTube in English. Like people say, well, what am I gonna make videos on? It's all oversaturated anyway. It's all taken. No, you're not seeing things from a broader perspective. So, to go back into the topic, now I would like to take you on a little journey in your imagination. Let's go to imagination land. How do you think the world will be in 20 years? How do you think the world will be in 20 years from now? Interesting question, right? Let's ask this butterfly. Butterfly, how do you think the world will be in 20 years? Butterfly doesn't give a shit. So, if we have changed this radically and this dramatically in 20 years, now the next 20 years, the change is even more exponential. So if I was to draw this on a graph, right? And we have from 1999, for the sake of convenience, let's just say because we're nearing 2020. Let's say from the year 2000 to the year 2020. If I had this on graph, it would be like a sudden change, pretty exponential, but then it would get even more exponential in the next 20 years. What do you think the world's going to look like in 20 years from now? It's very, very difficult to tell because of how volatile everything is. Okay, so I'm going to throw my own prediction, some of the things that I personally see in the future. And they're just my predictions because, like I said, it's very difficult. What I have come to understand, and I've come to understand this just based on insights that I get from the other side, let's say, based on communication with the other side, based on hearing my guides, based on my occasional experiments with psychedelics, based on my observations of nature, of the world, of trends, of where things are going. I believe in 20 years from now, we're gonna have a lot more people living off the grid in small communities in a back to nature style. That's what I see happening in the next 20 years. I see more and more of that, especially in the West, especially in America, in Canada, in Europe. I really think that that's where a lot of people are heading in the world. And I think despite the grim outlook on everything, and despite it seeming like the world's about to end, and zombies are attacking and stuff, I really don't think so. Because if you compare the world now, 2020, back to 1950, the world just got out of World War II, for God's sake. Okay, 70 years ago. Some people are still alive from World War II, to tell you, to just describe to you how grim the world was just 70 years ago. Now, black people still sat in the back of the buses 7 years ago. Homosexuals were beaten up, bullied, locked up in prison. And doctors smoked as they were treating their patients. And animal cruelty was a thing. People didn't protest it. They didn't, there was no such thing as save the animals and save the planet. That was just a regular thing in the culture. Like, yeah, of course, it's just animals. Look at the world now. Look where we are. Beyond Meat burgers. All these movements for saving the planet and saving the animal and environmentalism and etc. Sure, there's still a lot of people that are against it, that don't want to move on with the evolution of times. Nevertheless, the fact that these movements exist now and they keep gaining popularity and momentum, it goes to show you. It goes to show you that indeed the planet is becoming a fourth density planet. It's very clear actually when you see it. When you just sit down and observe it neutrally, forget that, you may want things to get better. You might want to be more loved, but even take that out of the equation. Just observe it. Like, just compare the world now, 70 years ago. Just compare it now to 7 years ago. Compare the level of tolerance, even the level of poverty. Less and less people are living in poverty now, percentage-wise, from the population of the planet, than 70 years ago, 80 years ago. And it's projected actually that by something, I don't know, projections, 2050, 2060, 2040 or something, that actually poverty will be eradicated from the world. That there will no longer be anybody starving and living in these dire poverty conditions, and everybody will have access to clean drinking water. So, I mean, when you really step outside of what seems like a grim situation and just observe, like, okay, well, how has it been in the last 100 years? How has it been in the last 200 years? How has it been in the last 1,000 years? The Mongol invasion 1,000 years ago, killing 10% of the world's population with bare hands. They didn't have nuclear technology. The Crusades were happening at the same time. Wow. Wow. Really wow. I mean, wow. Wow. When you think about it like this, even go back to World War I, World War II, wow. Okay? Just wow. So, as the world gets more interconnected, it's becoming less and less likely for any world war to happen now, because of how everything's so connected now, how everybody's dependent on everybody. Sure, China doesn't like America, America doesn't like China, but they need each other now. They understand economically they need one another. So it's a lot less likely for them to go to war. You see? It's more of an economic, political war, but it's less likely, actually, believe it or not, it's less likely for violence to happen in this day and age. And all these millennials, by the way, I know there's a lot of shit talking about the millennials, and I see where it's coming from. Because, they're over-dependent on technology, blah, blah, blah. They have anxiety issues, overweight issues, all these things. But they're, one thing I'll give it to them, I guess I am a millennial, I suppose by definition. It's a hell of a lot more tolerant generation than the ones before. More accepting. So 20 years from now, guess who's gonna be running the societies? It's gonna be these people that they have a host of issues, but at least they're tolerant. They're less discriminatory. So they are more open to the love vibration, the accepting vibration. So I actually have I call it an objectively optimistic view of the world in 20 years from now. I really do. I really do, and I call it objective because I really just am looking at the trends here. I'm looking at what's happening here. At least now when you see something on the internet, somebody killing or this, at least there's outrage. That alone shows you where we're moving. You think there was outrage 1,000 years ago when you were walking around and somebody came and chopped somebody's head off right in front of you? None of that, because that was the norm. That was the norm. At least now there's outrage. You go on the internet and animals are being tortured. And everybody, read the comments. What outrage, what absurdity, Even say the people that eat meat, they're becoming more conscious about it. They're saying, well, I don't want the animals to go through cruelty, etc., etc. In other words, everybody's becoming more conscious. Wherever their level of consciousness is, they're gaining momentum in that, because it's all built for evolution, you see? And And like I said, if you actually just observe it, it's very clear that the planet is making a shift from an old paradigm, which is called third density, an old way of perceiving the world, an old consciousness, into a new one. It's very, very, very clear. So now there is more wanderers, more people also from like star people and stuff, from like other densities that bring love, bring light into this world. And more people are incarnating now to fulfill this role. You see? So we have more of the love and light people too, taking on births in this on this planet. And I teach, like I said, I teach kids on in China English, and I actually come across a lot of very, very, very. I come across a lot of like just very sweet kids, man. Like I can just be like, clearly you guys are taking a birth here to spread more love and light. Like I come across very, very sweet kids. Like I taught this this girl the other day. Her name is Stephanie, and every time we start the class, she tells me I love you. She draws me a big heart, and then she tells me, Teacher Saeed, you're so good. I love you. And I actually encounter more and more of these kids now. They're just so sweet, and I clearly these are like kids that are taking on births here to spread more love, to spread more light. So these kids will be 25, 26, 20 years from now. They're gonna be the ones. They're gonna be the ones in universities. They're gonna be the ones leading the change, right? It's a different world. It really is a different world. So I see it as objective optimism, not fake, because there's still a lot of things that are, dark about this planet. Okay, and it's going through a transitional period. The internet. I ought to make a video I'll make a video about the internet after this. It's gonna be a long one, but just to brush on the internet a little bit. The internet is actually an invention, an idea planted in our psyche as humanity, picked up and implemented. Its original source is the Confederation. It's positive entities, okay? Because it is through the internet. Although the dark forces, they started to. I know we sound like Star Wars here, right? But it is with the drama here is a Star Wars type drama. On the planet, it's a very dualistic and conflicted planet. So the dark side picked up the idea and used it and thought that they're gonna use it to further enhance their agenda, but little did they know that it was a trap. Actually, that the idea was actually its source, its origin was more from the light side, because that's how. By the way, that's how fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional entities speak to us. They speak to us via thought forms, via ideas. That's why like when they're usually when something is discovered, it's discovered independently by several scientists and several different people around the globe independently, because the idea, those more subtler entities, whether they have a light agenda or a dark agenda, they plant the idea in the consciousness, in the collective consciousness, and then people start to pick it up. Like now we have the idea of Breatharianism. There's a channel, Bashar, I think. He says, he predicts that in the next 50 years or so, or 100 years, 60, 50 or 100 years, there's gonna be the population of the world will be 10% Breatharian, because now these lighter entities, they are planting the idea. It's being planted from like the positively oriented entities up there. The idea is being planted now, the idea of Breatharianism. That's why it's picking up momentum. If you're familiar with the Breatharian community, you see how quickly it's spreading, living off prana, right? Living off subtler energies, not needing food. And this idea is being planted now in the mass consciousness, because it's going to really, really help the planet heal Think about it. If 10% of the world's population no longer needs food to be sustained, can you think of how sustainable that is for the planet and how positive that is for the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom? So anyway, that's how it happens usually. So the internet, which we'll talk about in a whole different video, the internet is such a thing. The internet is actually the tool in which the Confederation, the lighter entities, I suppose, actually see positive change will occur on the planet, is actually via the internet, which is exactly why you're watching me now on the internet, and exactly why these ideas are spreading like wildfire on the internet and gaining momentum. Now you look at some of the channels on YouTube that are more progressive, and you see now they're gaining like millions of subscribers, and it's like these ideas are becoming mainstream. And before you know it, something like breatharianism is mainstream. And before you know it, 1 in 10 people walking around will be breatharians. It'll be like a regular thing, you know? So 20 years from now, I see a very light, a much more evolved planet, a much more evolved consciousness. I really do. I really do. So anyway, we'll talk more about this later. Thank you to our Patreons for your support. Shout out to all 26 of you right now. You guys are awesome. If you would like to also support a one-time donation on PayPal, any amount will be appreciated. If you support this mission, you got a couple of bucks a month to throw, head over to Patreon. The links are in the description. Instagram, Saeed Mobayed, if you want to talk directly. And until next time, may the force be with you.